You are listening to Conscious Fever, hosted by Karl Price.
Louisville's finest, DJ Ice.
Hey, good evening. Welcome to Conscious Fever here on Ice Entertainment Television and Conscious Fever Radio. I'm not going to use my glasses. I am Karl Price, your host. Welcome to the show tonight. We're talking about Chauvin, the Chauvin conviction, the 16-year-old that was killed, and the deputy that has killed a black man in North Carolina. So here we go. This is some stuff that we want to talk about tonight. I hope you can join us here on Conscious Fever, Ice Entertainment Television. I just need to get where I can see what's going on. There we go. Okay. So again, welcome to the show. I am Karl Price, your host. As always, I'm just trying to move some things around. One day we are going to have the blessings of DJ Ice back on the set here, and once we do, we will be ready to rock and roll. I got Paul Mullins with me tonight. I got John Yah, and they're going to join me tonight, and we're going to talk about the Chauvin conviction and the 16-year-old who was killed. But I'm going to start out with something just a little bit different. So you're going to see me just dip here in just a second, because I am obviously we all have been made aware now that a deputy shoots and killed a black man while serving a warrant in North Carolina. And as always, I'm going to get things together. So here we go again. I mean, since the last time we talked, a couple of things have happened. One thing is that a 16-year-old was killed by the police, a white officer, and this black man that was killed in North Carolina, not much information has been provided, so we don't know whether that was a black man, a black officer, or a white officer. But here's the report that came out today. It's from Elizabeth City, North Carolina. Some of y'all may be familiar with that. And it reads as follows, that a North Carolina deputy shot and killed a black man while serving a search warrant yesterday. Of course, this has spurred an outcry from community members who demanded law enforcement accountability and the immediate release of body camera footage. The same routine. Here we go again, right? Authorities would not provide at all. They will not provide details of the shooting, but an eyewitness said that Andrew Brown, you see his picture behind me, was shot while trying to drive away, and that deputies fired at him multiple times. The car skidded out of Brown's yard and eventually hit a tree. This is according to Demetria Williams, who lives on the same street. Demetria Williams said after hearing one gunshot, she ran outside where she saw other shots being fired at the car. This is a quote from her. When they opened the door, he was already dead, she told the Associated Press. He was slumped over, and she said officers tried to perform chest compressions on him, but to no avail. The car authorities removed from the scene appear to have multiple bullet holes and a broken rear windshield. The county sheriff's deputy, who has been placed on leave pending a review by the State Bureau of Investigation. The sheriff, Tommy Wooten II, said at a news conference that court records show Brown was 42 years old and had a history of drug charges and misdemeanor drug possession convictions. Right? Here we go again. Dozens of people gathered at the scene of the shooting in Elizabeth City, a municipality of about 18,000 people and only 170 miles. The city is located northeast of Raleigh, North Carolina, where they expressed their anger and rallied around Brown's family's members. A large crowd later stood outside City Hall while the city council held an emergency meeting, some holding signs proclaiming, quote unquote, Black Lives Matter and Stop Killing Unarmed Black Men. As the evening wore on, a group gathered in the parking lot of the sheriff's office, and a crowd that grew to more than 200 blocked traffic on the main thoroughfare of the city, forcing cars to turn around. People gathered outside the municipal building after at least one county sheriff, deputy, whoever he was, they just wanted to know who this man was and identify this man that had shot and killed this black man supposedly while executing this search warrant. So here we go again. And I think I've got the right, the absolute perfect graphic for that. Same old shit. Right? Just the same old shit, y'all. This is here we are again. Right? And we use this gorilla behind us just to make the point. This is the same old shit. And that's some of what we're going to be talking about tonight. So again, let me just pause this gorilla, because that's annoying that he's eating in my ear. But that's what we're going to talk about tonight. We're going to talk about this same old shit that keeps happening. Again, my guest is John Yah and attorney Paul Mullins. And right after this quick commercial break, we are going to come back. And when we come back, we're going to be joined by our guests just to talk about these issues tonight. Hope you can join us with some comments. If you're getting tired of Facebook and watching us on Facebook, do us a favor, watch us on YouTube. And coming soon, you can watch us on www.consciousfever.com. We'll be right back. I think we'll be right back.
And we are back with more Conscious Fever, hosted by Karl Price Esquire.
I have wept and I have fallen, don't you worry about me, 'cause I stood up, yes I have grown, the pain has set me free, and like a broken record in my head.
Welcome back to Conscious Fever, hosted by Karl Price. And we are back with more Conscious Fever, hosted by Karl Price Esquire.
So Dante Wright was laid to rest today. Interesting enough. But we're right back where we were before. Where is Carl Solo? Anyway, I'm going to be joined by my guest here shortly. But again, Dante Wright was laid to rest today. For those of you who didn't see his funeral services, they were excellent. Actually, Al Sharpton actually did a pretty good job. At least I thought he did a pretty good job. His eulogy was really good. And he's no longer to me just another black face that shows up at a protest. He's actually a pretty good preacher man. Anyway, I've got guests here tonight, and I'm going to do my best to bring them in. How y'all doing tonight?
All right, Karl. I'm good.
Okay, good. I do apologize. I'm going to come over just a little bit. I do apologize for any of the echoing. But we'll get through that as we plow through the show tonight. Interesting. Here we are again, North Carolina. Now it's happened in North Carolina. Now it's happened in Columbus. Which one y'all want to talk about first? Why don't we talk about before we get into those two, before we get into talking about either one of those, let's talk about the Chauvin conviction. Paul Mullins, you surprised? You said something on the show last week, and I'm going to rub it in your face, because you didn't say he was going to be acquitted, but you said if he was acquitted, throwing that shit out into the universe. But we were throwing out something a lot more powerful in the universe, that the evidence suggested that he would be convicted. And, of course, he was convicted. Your thoughts?
Justice was served. I mean, can't get a murder conviction, but that's the best we could have hoped for in that situation. I'm glad that...
I'm sorry.
Okay, I'm glad that there was a conviction and people can rest for a minute, but only a minute. right? Only a minute.
Right, right. John, your thoughts from a different
Um,
twist, I'm sure.
yeah, I'm sure. I have a question about the three charges and how they look at that with second degree murder, third degree murder, and second degree manslaughter. And how can you get convicted of all three? Now, I'm sure at the final sentences that will be broken down, but what do y'all think of how much time he's going to receive?
That's interesting because it's 8 weeks away, and um, it's hard for me. I'll just throw my 2 cents here before Paul, before you comment. It's hard for me to really gauge the judge, but what I have been able to gauge is that this judge is a stickler for the rules. He's a stickler for the rules. One of the things that a lot of people don't know, but us lawyers know all too well, John, is that one of the things that we notice about judges are supposed to sit there, show no emotion, show no sympathy, show no empathy. But boy, what that does is that builds up in them until it's time for them to pronounce the sentencing. Now, interesting, John, I don't know if you know, but Charvin, apparently in Minnesota, you can actually opt to have your sentencing hearing before a judge or before a jury. Charvin elected to have it before a judge.
Maybe
What do you think,
he knows
Paul?
something we don't. Maybe he knows something we don't. But his defense attorneys have been wrong the entire time, so maybe they'll be wrong again. That is interesting. That's interesting. I don't know how to. I don't really know how to express an opinion on that because we don't have anything comparable to that situation where you get to pick your sentencing. I guess uh, whether it's jury or judge, but I don't know why I would pick the judge unless he thought the judge wouldn't give him the max. I mean, obviously, he thought if we go to the jury, they're definitely going to give us the max because they already convicted us, but that's not necessarily the case. Jury might. First of all, Carl, I got to say that, we're Kentucky lawyers. I don't understand Minnesota law. To be honest with you, even though I'm a lawyer, I had the same question John had. How do you get convicted of three different murders? I never bothered to look it up or try to figure out why they do it like that in Minnesota. But I can't think of anything comparable in Kentucky where we might have that type of ruling that they had, where they convict them of all three offenses, including lesser included. Did you read up on that to figure out why that is? I didn't care, but
I didn't. I did not, but I can tell you, having watched most of the trial, and I would say about 90% of the trial, I got the impression that there's one charge that must run concurrent with another charge, and that's it. So he's likely facing up to 40 years in the penitentiary. As a minimum of, I think it's a minimum of 12 and a maximum of 40. So although he's been convicted of all of these charges that sound like they're lesser included, that's what we call it as lawyers, lesser included charges. Right. They're really not in Minnesota. And the rule here in Kentucky and across the country is that if the prosecution must prove different elements, then it can't be lesser included. They're not actually the same, and you can't claim that it would be double jeopardy to be sentenced on both.
I heard the verdict and I was surprised at the way they read it out because they sound. I don't know Minnesota law, but they sounded like lesser included offenses, honestly. But I couldn't tell. I mean, only one person died, but he's got three different charges involving someone.
Right. So
I mean, I could sit here and speculate, but I don't know. But again, back to your question of why would he choose the judge unless the defense honestly thought that the judge was going to be more lenient than the jury? Why would he do that? With a jury, you'd have to have 12 people decide a range from 12 to 40, which is a lot harder and it creates more room for compromise than a judge who just might look at the case and say, oh, this is heinous, I'm going to sentence you to 40. or a judge who says, well, I got sympathy for police officer and gives him 12. So he must know something we don't.
Oh, you think?
I just don't understand. I mean, I don't know. We've never had to deal with that here in Kentucky, but I just find it interesting that you would let one person decide your sentencing as opposed to trying to make 12 people, all agree on something, unless that's not really how it goes in Minnesota. Maybe they don't all need to agree. But I don't have enough energy or time to bother looking that up. I'm just glad he got convicted.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of people have taken that same position. They're just happy that, that he got convicted. But
Are y'all saying that has never happened in Kentucky?
Well, I think it always happens in Kentucky. And let me just make sure we're on the same page. I think it always happens in Kentucky. I think what happens is trials are bifurcated in Kentucky, as you know. You have a guilt phase, and then you have a guilt and innocent phase for the trial, and then you have a sentencing phase, right?
Correct.
In felony cases. And during the sentencing phase, the jury recommends a sentence to the judge, and the judge makes the ultimate determination. But apparently in Minnesota, he has elected not to allow the jury to go back to the sentencing phase and come back and say we think he should get 40 years. That he's opted for the judge because maybe the judge would be a little bit more lenient. You know how it is here, Paul, right? We know our judges. Yeah. We know the most lenient ones. We know the harshest one. We know the ones that are going to give the max and the ones that are going to get the minimums. So, you take advantage of that opportunity and choose that person. Now, apparently that's what he's done in Minnesota. So, John, I don't. So it's a little bit different here. But I don't think they have the same in Minnesota, and that's why he discharged the jury altogether.
Well, I mean, it's not. Well, I can tell you this: it's about strategy. Karl Price, if you can remember, in my case where I was facing the death penalty and I was convicted, I opted out to allow the jury to actually sentence me and allow to take the 25 years.
Right.
And the reason I did that was because I was facing the death penalty, and I felt that it would be better, of course, with John Stewart, and they came back with the deal. So we avoided the sentencing phase.
Right. Interesting.
But there's not much more to say about the George Floyd case. I mean, if he gets 12 years, if he gets 20, if he gets 40, there are going to be people who say that's too much. There's going to be the important thing is he got a conviction because of the conviction is enough. If you're a rogue officer, to at least put a chilling effect and say I need to take a look at my behavior.
Yeah, and maybe that's what he needs to do. Well, let's talk about some other things. I've seen. Just a couple of comments here. I don't know where these comments are going to go, so I may put them on your face and then may have to adjust them. Let me just do it that way and just put it down here and see if I can lower. Can you all see that comment? She says, it seems like there were conditions associated with each charge. How do they intersect?
Good point.
Yeah. I mean, again, it gets down, Tammy, by the way, it just gets down to the elements. Whatever the elements are, if they intersect because they don't conflict. Would you agree with that, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, you're basically saying they're not lesser included, but I didn't watch enough of the trial. Basically, I didn't care enough about the trial to try to understand what the difference in the charges was. I just needed a conviction. Right.
And I think we're all happy that there is a conviction. Let's talk about another topic. I'm going to show the viewers, and I'm going to show you guys a video. And from this video, I want y'all to take a look at this video, and then we're going to comment on this 16-year-old, believe it or not.
Hey. What's going on? Hey, what's going on? Hey, get down! No, you ain't shoot my fucking baby! You shot my baby! I got it. Take him.
How long would you time please involve shooting? It's going to be 3171 Legion Lane. Officers are okay.
I got witnesses in this car, so you might want to take him over there.
We're
going to come over here to the left. All right. Are you hit?
No, she charged the other person with a knife.
We'll figure it out.
And she kept charging her with a knife.
We'll figure it out.
All right.
I'm sorry, who are you?
All right, what's right about it, y'all, and what's wrong about it?
I mean, I guess I'll start. I've seen this video and I've seen the close-ups. Apparently, that girl, even though she was 16, I'm not going to sit here and say anything crazy. She lost her life. It's sad. But, I got to put myself in the shoes of the officer. If he doesn't do anything, they blame him for the person getting stabbed. It's just, this is not George Floyd.
Right. You said this is not George Floyd.
Right. The girl, there was a fight. You can see in the video, he comes on the scene. It's already chaotic. From the start of that video to the time he shot, 5 seconds to make a decision on whether or not this little girl's going to stab and kill somebody sitting up against the car. Does he know that she's 16? Does he know that he's somebody's baby? She's just an angry black person, but I don't see any room to go in there and grab her with his hands. Now, maybe if you had a taser, but I didn't see any space in there where he had time to decide whether to use a taser. I mean, she was going to stab somebody right up against that car, and I don't know who it was. Was it her sister, her cousin, a stranger? What was it? There was a fight, and her family couldn't stop her from stabbing. So if the lady stabs the other lady and fatally wounds her, then they turn around and sue the police officer for not doing anything. It's really sad. It's really sad. I'm wondering if that 16-year-old baby had some kind of mental health issue. If she had anger problems. What was going on? We'll never really know. But this is not the same kind of case. This is not I hate to say this. I'm going to be vilified for saying this. It's on your video, but this is not a black. From what I see so far, from the evidence I know so far in that short video, this is not a Black Lives Matter protest moment.
Whoa. Okay.
That shooting just didn't do it.
Well,
imagine if your son was standing up against that car and he's about to get stabbed at his girl. Let's say it wasn't even a fatal wound. He was just about to get stabbed and, some kind of serious disfigurement. What is the officer supposed to watch that? I mean, I got a nephew who got stabbed when he was a 20-year-old, and he died from one stab wound to the stomach. It don't take much to die from a stab wound.
Well, I think you bring up a very interesting issue, Paul. What you said, if I heard you correctly, what you said was, in other words, I'm a paraphrase you. I don't want to put words into your mouth. You said, hell, she got what she deserved.
No, I didn't say that, Karl.
He didn't say that.
It didn't say that. But listen, but here's what it sounds like you said, and you can correct me if you wish. What it sounds like is that we got to do better. We have to do better as
raising our kids,
as a people, because when you look at Dante, Wright. Let's look at Dante Wright for a second. Dante Wright didn't have to try to run. He just didn't have to try to run, bottom line. And then you look at this girl with, in this particular video, and the 16-year-old, and she was, how do you do that? Tell me how you do that. Tell me how you call the police for help. Tell me how you call the police for help, and then when the police arrives, you undertake deadly force against another person in front of the police. So my question, and no pun intended, and all sympathy and all prayers to the family, but my question is very simple. Why in the hell would you do that? I know she's 16 years old. I know Dante Wright was 18 or 19, right?
Yeah.
I
don't know his exact age, but yeah.
Do we give them a pass for that?
I mean, here's the problem. And people need to recognize this. John, tell me if you believe this to be true. But some of your most dangerous people can be young teenagers. Whether that's 16 to 19, they can be some of the most dangerous people. So we can't say we give them a pass because she's 16. She had a knife in her hand. She could be on trial for murder.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel sorry for the whole situation. I don't like the fact that it's yet another Black Death, but this is not a protest movement because first of all, she wasn't just having a run in with the police. She was in the act of trying to seriously injure someone. So the father who yelled out, "You just shot my baby," he should have been yelling at his daughter, "Baby, calm down, get your ass over here. The
Right.
police are gonna shoot you."
Right, and I just want to bring in some of the comments here, y'all, and I want y'all to check out some of these comments. So here's one from Joe Tapper. Y'all know he's a co-host of the Tipping Point Show here on WLOU on Saturday mornings, and the Tipping Point Show on Facebook. He says, and I know this is going to go away, and I'm going to bring it back, but let me bring it back. And it says, "Oh, FYI, from what I hear, that was the father that was over there kicking the other girl on the ground." Good point. Why didn't he shoot the father?
Well, the father wasn't using deadly force. Sorry,
Well,
John. John, go ahead.
Here's what you have here. You have a chaotic scene, like Paul said. And we got to ask ourselves, we have to question our behavior in this situation. Now, it's my understanding the girl that did the stabbing that was killed was the one that called the police, and she was the one being jumped by that girl and another girl on the ground.
Right.
If you look at the video carefully, you see a grown man kicking a young lady in the back of her head while she's on the ground. Then you see the officer. Some people said that the officer came out with the gun in their hand from the beginning. Actually, that officer came out with her hands trying to calm the situation down. Here's what disturbs me is the whole chaotic scene in front of the police, right? We behaving like this in front of the cops, and here we are. We don't recognize that behavior will lead to them reacting, and
Right.
the officer had no choice. What I saw was this: if that was my daughter that was gonna be stabbed, I would be praising that officer because he did a great shot. He didn't shoot my daughter; he shot the right person. Other side, you have another side where somebody's wearing the daughter that was killed. Well, he was part of the issue also. I mean, when you really think about it, I'm sorry that she was 16 years old. I'm sorry that she had to die, period. But under the circumstances, what would we have been saying if the officer did nothing and that girl was stabbed and she died?
We'll
We would
still
be blamed.
we'll still have a protest, right?
Exactly.
We'll still have a protest. So here's my question to you and Paul. John, would you go out and join the protest against the Columbus police based upon what you've seen in that video?
Absolutely not. I'm not emotionally involved. I'm more intellectually involved because this is the problem with Black people. Us. We are emotional, and they're playing our emotions all over the news. I don't care what news you watch. You're gonna see it. You're gonna see the headlines. Oh, Black girl. Black girl shot by officer. You're gonna see the word black. All the headlines, right? These are trigger words. Very large trigger words. So nobody wants to think common sense because here's the thing: when you emotional, we know this is a fact. Black people are the most emotional people, specifically in this country. And we also know that when you are emotional, common sense goes out the door. So that whole scene was an emotional scene. And here you got white officers who don't understand our concept of emotion. I mean, if you raise your voice how Black people talk, white officers get scared. It's just how we are. Here's the whole thing was an emotional environment. And the officer comes in the middle of this emotional environment and sees a girl with a knife. I don't see this. I don't see this as a Black Lives Matter protest or any reason for that at all.
What
I
about you,
think we're
Paul?
focusing
I
on
said I said the
what are
same
we
thing
doing.
before. It's
Right,
not a Black Lives Matter protest moment.
right. So, what's the solution here? How could she have avoided being shot? Just act civilized. Definitely not try to stab another person in front of the police
If
officer.
a cop standing there and I got a weapon and I'm trying to hurt somebody, put the weapon down. Period.
Yeah,
Stop fighting in front of the officers. I
yeah,
mean, I ain't trying to kick her while she's down, but that's common sense, man. It's just this topic is dead. It shouldn't be sensationalized in the news when you compare it to George Floyd and other people who are true victims need
right.
protest marches. This
Yeah,
shouldn't be portrayed in the news as that.
yeah.
I
I
mean,
think
if this girl were white, honestly, we wouldn't be talking about it.
right. And, which gets us back, Paul, to another discussion that we need to have for another day. And that discussion is I'm going to try something here because I just might be too loud. That's why I'm echoing. But can you all still hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So let me get back to this part of the discussion, which to a certain extent tells us that well, Paul, you touched upon something that I really wanted to go at, but I didn't want to go all the way there, but I'm going to just go there just a little bit. And that is the discussion about why aren't we protesting when blacks kill each other, right?
No, I didn't say that.
I know you didn't say that, but I'm telling you, I believe that you touched upon that. But I don't want to get into that discussion today because that's a discussion. Don't roll your eyes, man. That's what you. That's what you did. But listen. I totally agree with both of you all. I think that one, Dante Wright. I'm going to bring in Dante Wright. Dante Wright should have just complied. I mean, if there are people out there saying don't comply with the police officer, et cetera, that's bullshit. You have to understand that the police is the judge, the jury, and the executioner on the street. Period. Right, Paul? I mean, in a sense.
No.
Okay.
I think you need to be respectful with anybody who's got the ability to, with the government behind him, take you down, harm you, possibly even kill you, and then it's your word against his. I think you need to be respectful to anyone in that position on the streets, not subservient, but respectful, because your own life is at stake. So you don't want somebody who comes to you, who's having a bad day, who is racist, who whatever baggage they bring with them, and then you give them some extra trouble so they can just, cap somebody that day. I'm not saying officers think like that, but they're still human beings. People have, how many times in your day have you made a mistake? Officers make mistakes. Officers have their own personal problems, and they bring all that to the job too. Ain't no sense in putting nobody under stress when your life is the only one in danger. Be respectful. I've been pulled over many times, and I found that being respectful and courteous sometimes gets you completely out of what you got pulled over for, just because you throw them off. Like, why are you so nice? What the hell? All right, I got the wrong person. Let me move on.
Exactly.
Right. So let me just take a look at this comment here. A couple of comments by Misho and Daniels down in Atlanta. John's again on point. Emotionalism and out of order. Okay, John, we're gonna give you. I don't know what you get for that. You want a cookie for that, or what do you want for that? But listen. But he makes a good point. And he also says, here we go. The solution is the parents had no authority with his own child. Yeah, I'm still at a loss as to why nobody went after the man that was kicking a woman in her head while she was on the ground.
Well, the bigger threat at the time was the child with the knife.
No, I get that. And I get that.
The video was 5 or 6 seconds. We can all break it down and say this choice, that choice. But the immediate threat, the clear and present danger, if you will, was the girl with the knife. And and the officer was I mean, I'm not praising him over, over, necessarily. I hate the fact that I don't hate the fact, but I'm sitting here praising this officer. But John said it. I've said it. That girl had a knife. She had somebody pinned against the car. What would we have her do?
Yeah.
I mean, you think somebody's gonna talk her out of about to stab somebody? So the guy kicking the girl was secondary, you know. So
Yeah, I'm glad I wasn't a police officer. I would have shot them both. But but no, but listen, but seriously, on a serious note, I just think that we need to do better with our children. I mean that whole scene told me that the police officers came out to a dysfunctional situation with two dysfunctional families. And all prayers are up for the 16-year-old's family. But if I served on the jury, I wouldn't convict the police officer if he ever got charged. I don't think he should get charged. You agree with me, Paul?
let's talk about something else. Let's
Hold
talk
on, hold
about
on, hold
how
on a second,
quickly
Paul. Hold on. I asked you a question. Do you think he should be charged?
with what?
That's a no. John, you think he should be charged?
Oh, absolutely not.
Right. Right.
I mean, what would the charge? What would the charge be? Was it murder? Because he'd have defense of others as a defense. I mean, but I think a good question. Maybe this isn't a real topic, but how quickly we got the body cam out on that one? How many? When did this happen?
Well, let me just make one caveat to the body camera. The problem with releasing body camera very early is that they generally release one body camera, and there are so many police officers out there with body cameras. So I think it's a bad communicative practices for the police department to speak on their reliance on just one angle from a body camera. Because as you know, when the other body cameras come out, there are things in that body camera that can show you something a little bit more. In this
Well,
case, I'm not sure if it's going to show us anything differently. I mean,
Right.
clearly from this particular body camera, the girl had a big ass knife in her hand, and she was going after this girl. But let me touch upon a couple of other comments here for y'all to comment on. We have to react better in violent situations. Parents have to behave better. Don't run and say you killed my baby when you should have kept her in the house. Agree? Y'all agree
Yeah.
with that?
I mean,
Yeah.
we are all hitting the same point, which is if your parents don't raise you right, you're gonna do wrong. And if your parents out there helping you do wrong, how you gonna learn to do right? I mean, he's out there doing the same thing he's telling her not to do. He's
Right.
out there fighting the girl, and he's trying to teach his daughter not to fight girls. I mean, why? That's why she's probably pulled a knife because that's what her daddy would do.
Right. And then he shouts, you just killed my baby. You just killed my baby. Here's another
I mean,
comment.
anybody. I don't blame him for that. 'Cause everybody would do that, even if your child's wrong. Everybody would shout that out. Your child could be whatever. You would still shout that. It's your child. I don't fault him for that. I just think that from the beginning, there was. I mean, I'm trying to. Again, I hate when I'm playing armchair quarterback, but yeah, he could have done it. He could have parented different. Maybe we don't know everything. Maybe she was out of control. Maybe she had bipolar disorder. Maybe she was going to do what she wanted to do. I mean, she's 16. Sometimes when you're 16, you can't tell a child nothing because you done lost all authority from when they was, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12.
Yeah. Here's a comment. I want to know why blacks are not protesting when blacks are killing each other. What do you think about that, John? Yeah.
Yeah, well, because here's the thing that I think we failing to look at in this whole scenario. This whole scenario deals with our image, our image in the face of America, and I think that's important. If we have low value for ourselves, how can we expect another people to have a high value of ourselves? Let me give you an example, and these are just statistics in the west end of Louisville, and you can do this all over the country in any city where the urban areas is. You have the highest crime area. This is why most of us who gain wealth don't stay in those areas, right? So then you have officers, and let's say, for instance, You have more of your officers concentrated in the high crime areas. Well, more crimes happen there. Why wouldn't it be more officers in a high crime area? But what we're not paying attention is to the behavior. Not only do we see each other as a threat, white people see us as a threat. No, yes, we blame white people for seeing us as a threat. But let me tell you something. In my business that I do, and because I came up in the streets, I'm aware of behaviors. I was part of the criminal segment in the West End when I was coming up. I understand people's concern, right? But after I got my life together and I started my business and saw life differently. Listen, when I go, most of my uh, accounts throughout Louisville, Lexington, Cincinnati are in the hood. My best accounts are in the hood, and I have to through my thought know that I have to be more careful in the hood than I do when I'm out in Bargetown Road or way out serving my account, right? I have to be a little bit more careful, even when going into stores and coming out. It is more of a threat to me than it is the Coca-Cola man going and filling up their Coca-Cola machines or the box into the stores. They look at me more as a potential victim than they do the white man coming in the store. I kid you not. So we have a behavior problem, but we have an image of how we see ourselves. We actually see ourselves this way. This is why the murder rate is so high in the black community. We won't wait until we'll kill one of our own because we see each other as a different threat. In other words, unlike the Asian community, you don't see Asians killing each other. You don't see other people in their communities. They're not a threat, but we are a threat in our own community. So the bottom line is that we have to change our behaviors of the way we see each other and how we interact with each other.
Yeah, yeah. Here's another comment. There's a needed respect for authority that started at the house. This is lost in our community. Agree or disagree?
I totally
Okay,
agree.
so going to everything John said, I agree with about 90% of it. I know that um, some of the blame is the way we treat each other in our community, but another part of that blame is the community we live in. Um, there's that saying, you can take somebody out of the ghetto, but you can't take the ghetto out of them. And we do need to change the way we see ourselves. But I can tell you this: I, I, Carl, to this day, they joke on me because I grew up in the East End, right? Oh, you one of those East End black people, right? I always got, the little joke here or there, as if I wasn't black, because I grew up in the East End. And growing up in the East End didn't make me a better or worse or anything other than I was still a black person. Um, but sometimes the environment you up in can be a problem to your growth, and that's real. Sometimes the environment you grow up in can be a detriment to your growth. If you grow up around people who idolize, the bad elements of our society, how are you going to know any different? And every child that's born doesn't get to pick and choose where he lives at the time of his birth. So the communities that we have, that we call, the West End, or the whatever areas of town where you think you need extra security when you're driving through, it's not so easy to just tell people to change their ways. Because in order for that one person to change something, they have to know what that change is going to be about. And you can't take a 16-year-old who's always grown up in a lifestyle of guns, drugs, and gangs. And I'm not saying that's every black kid. I'm not saying that's even a majority of them. But you can't take those kids up and say, no, you need to act like the kid, like Paul, who grew up in the East End, schools first, graduate, think beyond college. What are you going to do? That just isn't there all the time. So what needs to happen is, from a government standpoint, there needs to be resources put in the community so people feel like that lifestyle or whatever it is that's causing them to stunt their future is not an option anymore. But right now, if you're in a neighborhood that's full of drugs and crime ridden, going to college may not be as lucrative to you as selling some dope. And that's just the reality. And it happens to be that this might be a black neighborhood. It's not an Asian neighborhood, but I guarantee you in Louisville, we got some Asian neighborhoods that ain't doing so hot. Right? You
Right.
just don't hear about it.
Right, but Paul, but I don't. My thought is that we're talking about choices.
I mean, I'm saying to you, Carl, sometimes the choice that you have growing up isn't always available to everybody. I had a lot of choices growing up because I didn't have to worry about, walking home and getting jumped into a game. So I had a lot more choices. I didn't have to worry about that element of life, of growing up, of surviving. I got a client right now who's a 16-year-old who had friends come over and begged him to come outside. They go outside, and one of the friends shoots another friend. He knew that that might happen, but he felt like I need to go outside so I'm not a victim. I mean, that's like you're talking about choices. No, A and B is not always a choice.
I don't, Paul.
Sometimes you have circumstances that you're growing up in that you're, part of,
Right.
and it's eat or be eaten, kill or be killed. And I'm not saying that you can't grow up in the hood and make something of yourself and put all that life aside. I'm saying, it's not easy to have a choice A or B when the circumstances are completely different. And all the black neighborhoods are the poor neighborhoods, and it didn't just start yesterday. It's from a history of huddling all the black people to the West End where there was no money, where there was no economic, opportunity, where everything was depressed, and putting all the people who are well-to-do in the better areas. This is the result of that. So if you want to change that behavior, you got to put. There's no movie theater in the West End. There was at one point. There's no Walmart. There's no superstores. There's none of all the stuff that I can drive a mile from my house and see them 10 of them. Okay, in the East End, you don't have that in the West End because nobody wants to put stuff down there. And they say, well, we don't want to put stuff down there because
nobody, Paul? Who is nobody? Is nobody
investors,
white investors, or black investors?
It doesn't matter. Investors, people with money who want to make profit.
I think it does because I think that we have to shoulder the burden of.
But you don't want to do that.
Circumstances. I'm sorry.
But you wouldn't want to do that, and it's true. It's a cyclical problem because as an investor, even though you're black, as an investor, I still want to make money, right? Because I'm investing.
If you call yourself an investor, if you call yourself a community dedicated person, then you don't get into it for money. You get into it because of your loyalty to the community.
But that's unrealistic because most people are. Carl,
it's not unrealistic. I'm
gonna tell you why it's unrealistic. Give me a second. I'm gonna tell you why it's unrealistic.
Tell me why it's unrealistic, because
there are some people in this world who are philanthropists who want to do good, but the vast majority of people, human beings, are all really about how do I maximize my goodness. That's how people really think deep down inside. You don't want to admit that, but that's how people think. You don't go home at night and say, I'm making all this money as a lawyer and I want to build up the black community. I don't fault you for that. That's just normal human reaction.
Either way, I don't give a damn what you think you are entitled to.
And I think that's
you don't go out. I mean, but that's how human beings are. So I can't fault people for not wanting to think about maximizing their profits. So people don't invest in the West End because of some of the things we're talking about. But it's really just a history of systematic oppression of the black community. Put liquor stores in there because that sells. Okay? Don't put a Walmart because the black folks will steal. Put a gun store down there, because they'll buy up the guns or whatever. But you're not going to put a Saks Fifth Avenue down there. I mean, that's how it goes. It's not fair. It's not right. But it's the reality. And if you want to change the community, it does have to be invested. That's why I said it has to be a government investment. You can't expect people as individuals to just undertake the duty to do it. You get one or two or groups of people, but the mass. I mean, Carl, think about it. If 10 people did it, invested in the Louisville, that would be great. But you
why
know how
should
many
we
people
beg
there
the
are in
government
the
for it?
city
Why should
that
we
didn't
beg?
invest in the West End?
Why should we beg the government for it? That's the problem. That's what happened to us in the
Because
'60s
it's
and the
government.
'70s,
Because
and
it's
we and
government's.
hold on, let me finish. And we became welfare dependent.
It's government's fault that people are segregated into these places. It's
I
government's
agree.
fault who allowed to have neighborhoods where you couldn't integrate people. It's government's fault. And
I
this isn't
agree.
something you can change overnight.
I
Now I
agree,
tell you,
but I
living in
agree,
the East
Paul. But
End,
we should not wait for those who have oppressed us to bring us out of oppression.
okay, so
We
let's say
shouldn't
you
sit
got
around and wait for it, because the reality is, the logic of it is, if you fuck me over there, there's nothing you're gonna do to bring me out of what you fucked me into.
well, Carl, the reality is that if you had $100,000 to throw in West End development, that's one person. You want to give up 100,000 of your income. Let's say it's every year you want to give up $100,000. That's a drop in the bucket towards creating a real change in the West End, and that's one person. You're not going to get 100 people to invest $100,000 every year on their own.
I'm
It
glad your
takes a
confidence is so low, Paul. I
It's
think
not
that
confidence, Carl.
I
This is
think
not
that if we come
it's not
together,
confidence.
I think if we come together on these economic issues, as well as we come together on these social issues, I think we can make a change. I mean, all it takes is
I'm just
just a.
saying. I'm just saying. I hear what you're saying. We're saying the same thing. I just think it takes a government function to get some economic growth in the West End, and I don't think you can rely on individuals because individuals at the end of the day want to make a profit. And if they feel like an investment is risky, they don't do it. Yes, you can buy up West End homes and sell them. Buy a home for 30,000 and sell it for 80. But that's not like in the East End where you're buying something for 400,000 and selling it for 750,000. It's a different type of investment plan.
No,
You're not
listen.
going to have somebody build a comparable Lake Forest in the West End because they think it's risky. And I don't fault them for that, but it's just a reality.
Yeah, Paul. But I would tell you this. I don't disagree with everything you said, but I do have a problem with saying, the West End is going to stay the West End until the government comes in and do some shit about it. Listen, I believe that the government owes us. I'm a big advocate of reparations, right? I believe that they
And
owe
I'm not.
us. Okay, yeah, you wouldn't be. You wouldn't be. But I'm just saying that I'm a big advocate of reparations, because I know you're not a big advocate of reparations because you're worrying about, like, what all these old white men worry about. Well, how are we going to divvy it up? How
No,
did they
no.
divvy it?
Let
Hold
me.
on, hold on. How did they divvy it up to the Asians, to the Japanese, to the Jews? How did they divvy it up? There's a way to do it. That's number one. But listen, all I'm saying is this, and I may sound like Candace Owens when I say this. I don't think that we should continue to rely on what has been, and sometimes in our community, a welfare state. That's all I'm saying. I'm saying that we should pull
I don't
ourselves up by
consider.
our bootstraps. And for those who don't have the boots to pull up their straps, then we should assist them in getting those boots. But I don't think that those people without the boots should go run into the government and say, I'm going to stay down
I'm
here in
not.
this
I'm not
dirt
saying. I'm not
until you
saying a
come and help
handout,
me.
Carl.
I mean, look at
I'm not
John.
saying a
John didn't
handout.
do that.
I'm not saying a handout. Now I'm not saying a handout. What I'm saying is, if you're talking about investing in the West End, I'm not talking about just passing out checks like welfare. I'm talking about investment. Investment means infrastructure, buildings, places, landmarks, things that give people pride
Right, but in the
and make them
same
want to.
right, Paul, I don't mean to interrupt you, but in the same breath, then you said nobody's going to come and invest in the West End because everybody wants to make money. If you can't make any money from it, nobody's going to do it. And
Okay, that's why I said the government. I said you need a government force, like the
okay,
city, the state, the federal. You need government money. Why do you need government money? Because it costs billions to invest in an area and build it up.
right,
It doesn't cost hundreds of thousands. It costs billions. You can take hundreds of thousands in the West End and you can build a gymnasium. Okay, that's great. But if you completely redid the West End, and I'm not saying that the governments would do that, but you've got to make people. I just think it's kind of what Don said. People have to be prideful of where they live, and then you won't tear up with where you live. I'm
I,
not saying that it's like that everywhere in the West End, but I'm
right.
saying that if you live in a place that's impoverished and you feel like you have nothing, you know, why do people expect you to be something And some people do overcome that. Carl, you grew up in the West and you overcame that. But I'm saying,
Right, and I
great for
think
you.
I think everybody has the potential to do that, and that's when I get back to say, the people are making bad choices and they find themselves in a
And
situation. It's just like the people, and John and I talk about this all the time. We walk around the city and we see people that we went to junior high school with, and they look 20 years older than we do. Those are
all right, drugs
choices.
and stuff.
Right.
But
Well,
I'm
maybe not
saying to you,
drugs. I
Carl,
don't know. Maybe they just didn't eat the right foods. I don't know, but I'm just saying that. But hold on, Paul, before we go any further, let me get, before these comments get away, because this is one that I thought was really interesting. It says, you want to know something? What's funny? Asian hate commercials on TV ASAP. Blacks should be mad. Worst BLM commercials after 3 years. Do you understand? And I get where he's coming from. I get where he's coming from because Congress just passed an anti-Asian hate bill, and they won't even take. And the Senate won't even take up the lynching bill. I'm just saying. So when you talk about what is no reparations and all that shit,
so what's the difference? What's the difference? Tell me. You know what the difference is. What is it?
the difference with what?
Asians and the way they can affect change, and then Black Lives Matter. What is the real difference? You know it,
Okay.
and
I don't know if you want to go out on that limb, but because it sounds like what you're suggesting is that the Asians as a group are much more better in terms of organizing, in terms of living, in terms of community than Black people are. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying that exactly. That they're more organized and they
Oh
have
God.
good money.
Oh
Yes.
my God.
Think about it. Asians still, and I don't want
Either
to
way,
make.
I don't give a damn what you think you are entitled to.
I'm saying that the Asian community, they will, in a heartbeat, make the government feel remorse about what happened to them in 1940. And we can't even make them feel remorse about what they did to us in 1863, 1864. But the Asian community is organized to do that. And I don't know why. I don't know what it's racism actually, because they shouldn't have that ability to speed past everything. So that's the only thing I can think of off the top of my head.
What
The
we've
Asian
got
community
here
more,
is failure to communicate.
the Asian community is seen as more value to
We're not,
America than
Paul.
the
We're not
black community.
communicating. Let me just show a few more comments before we have to get out of here. We are the only culture of people that glorifies the negative attributes of our society.
Absolutely, that's what I was saying.
You agree with that, Paul?
Glorifies going to jail, glorifies not going to college, glorifies being black, in its most negative connotations. I can go to a barbershop. Oh, you went to college. You think you smart. Well, yeah, I went to college. I learned something. That's how you get treated. It's like, why? It should be, you went to college. That's wonderful. That's great. I'm gonna hope my kids go there. No, you get berated. Well, why are you speaking perfect English in high school? Why are you speaking perfect English? Because that's what I'm supposed to do. Stuff like that. And it's like the little things. My kids are black kids, okay, and I know they speak, that they speak with slang. But when they're around me, if they make a mistake in proper English, I correct them on the spot. Been doing that for years. So now when they're in right circles, they know how to write. They know how to talk when they're supposed to talk. They don't get looked at as you're an uneducated black person. It didn't take much effort on my part. They know the skills that they need to have, and people need to teach people that and not just assume. And look, things have changed in the black community. There's more and more black people living all over the city of Louisville who have changed how they view the things we're discussing, such as, what's important, going to jail. All that was really, in my mind, a big deal in the 90s with the gangster rap. That's what I went through when I was younger, okay? It's a lot better now.
Right. I'm showing
A
you
lot
this.
of people think more. A lot more people think like I do.
Yeah,
Like
I'm
the
showing
fact
you
that I
this.
grew up in the East End was really bad when I was growing up. Why? Just because I grew up in the East End. Today, nobody cares.
Right. I'm showing you this comment because, John, I'm going to ask you what happened.
What do you mean? What happened?
Look at her comment.
I can't read it. It's not big enough on my screen.
Okay, so she says, we are not willing to help one another. As black people used to love and respect one another, we had pride and care. People raised their children on porters, servants, and other low jobs. They sent them to college and raised wonderful human beings with next to nothing. What happened?
Let me address this. It's very interesting. We talked about Asians and black people and other foreigners in this country. Let me tell you the difference in them and us. They see themselves as foreigners. We see ourselves as residents. What does that mean? Let's take 10 black people that don't even know each other, or 10 black families that don't even know each other, and let's put them in Russia. Do you know that once they discover one another, they're going to have unity? Right? Because that's all they got, right? The Arabs, that's all they got. The Pakistanis, that's all they got. So I've seen the unity because they see each other as foreigners, trying to help each other come up. They do business amongst each other. They'll seek each other out. You got a community that is of Africans from Senegal. They got their own grocery store. They shop amongst each other. You got the Somalians in the Somalian community, right? They shop amongst each other. They support one another. Well, they see themselves as foreigners. We see ourselves as residents. So it's a difference, first of all. Secondly, and most important, we buy into everything that is on television. We have a secret love affair. I always say this with white people. We gravitate to their religion. We gravitate to their way of eating foods, right? So we do these things that don't work for us, and then we're wondering why we are acting the way we're acting. Well, listen, we got churches on every corner. Why ain't those churches investing? Why do we have to ask for the white man to come and invest? Because here's the thing. If the people's not going to change their behavior, why should anyone invest in it other than people who want gentrification and make a change out of the community? Hell, I had the opportunity to build my warehouse in the West End. I was offered it from the city to get a cheaper building down there. You think I wanted my building in the West End and I'd have to worry about it being broken into? Hell, my car was broken into damn near every week when I was living down there. So the point is that if you're not going to change the behavior of the people, it doesn't matter how much money you put in it, it's not going to make any difference. They still going to kill one another. They still going to sell dope to one another. So apparently we got to change behavior, and that takes what? Individuality, to look at themselves and turn off their television. Number one, the three things that's very important for black people to change. I'm going to give you what those three things are. Number one, we got to give up that Eurocentric religion. Number one. Number two, we got to get off their diet. We got to quit eating the way they eat. Number three, we got to turn off the television and get out of the media. Why? Because listen to the music they're playing. The music they're playing today ain't the music they were playing when I was coming up. We got music where we're calling women bitches and hoes and justify selling dope and mentioning Molly. All these things are consciousness going right into the subconscious of a child. You ever heard a song that was called Molly? Molly's a drug, but this was a popular song played all over the radio, played on television. And now all of a sudden, Molly became the number one drugs amongst who? Mostly black people, right? Because we're not turning off the television. We're allowing ourselves to be programmed in this dimension, allow into violence. We glorify the violence. We glorify the drug dealing. Young women having sex with men with no condom. He's broke. He ain't got no money. Where does that behavior come from? You're raising a child in poverty, and guess what? That child becomes impoverished as they grow up because they didn't learn nothing from their parents, right? So it's continuous cycle. So where do it stop? You can't pour money in it. Each individual has to make their own choices and say, you know what? I got to make this change and stop. That's it.
Interesting.
I agree.
That is.
I agree.
Yeah, very interesting.
I guess at some point we got to stop making excuses for ourselves and quit feeling like it won't get any better, which is kind of the argument I made earlier. But still, I mean, you can't discount the lady who commented earlier about how it was in the 60s. And she said, what happened? The 70s and 80s is when we started to really, because I do know what she's talking about in the 60s. I mean, think about Sidney Poitier and all his movies of how, they perceived Black communities to be. Everybody was, it was just a little different. I ain't gonna say everybody was better off or more respectful, but it just seemed like a time period when our neighborhoods weren't that bad. Like she said, they were, gorgeous parks, everything, everybody took care of everything. And then suddenly 70s and 80s come along and the Black neighborhoods are terrible. But let me give you this point, Karl. Like I said, there's Black people living all over the city now. We're not just huddled up in the West End. Do you find it interesting that people who grow up in neighborhoods outside of the West End don't always act like the stereotypes we've talked about here tonight? Like, for instance, I don't know if I don't have any proof. I just only have anecdotal stories. But when I was growing up, I've been living in the East End since I can remember, 3, 4 years old. I always lived in white neighborhoods. Always been told that something was wrong with me because my family lived in the, East End. But as I grow up today, I see more and more people intermixed all over the city, and everybody's raising their kids the same way I was raised. You know, uh, you know, one or two parents teaching respect. I mean, my kids, I don't let them play video games like the one where they shoot and kill everybody. It's glamorized. I don't even know what it's called, but I won't let them bring stupid games in the house or let them watch, stuff like that. I don't let them listen to rap music with all the cussing and the drugs that you're talking about. They know that if I'm around, I'm sure they're kids. I'm sure they're teenagers. I'm sure they listen to the stuff when I ain't around, but they don't do that in front of me. And it's not because I don't necessarily, I don't hate rap music. I just know exactly what Don says. It feeds into their mind and they start thinking that's the mindset. I'm listening to the music that says dealing dope is fun, dealing dope gets you the money. I'm watching, everything that says it's all about balling and pimping hoes. That's what kids think. So yes, it's about how we see ourselves. And that's not how my kids are going to see Black people, as far as I can help it.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, we have been going for a great deal of time now. Man, this has been very, very fruitful discussion. At least I think it has been. I don't know about y'all, but we at the end of the day, people that look like us, we just have to get ourselves together. And I say that with one caveat that there's a lot of us who have our shit together. Okay, we're really talking about those few that are more published, right? Right, where the cameras and the media focus on. So it makes us all look bad. That's why we're a threat as Black men, right? No matter what our wealth level is, right? Y'all agree with that, right?
Yes.
Because it's what's been communicated, over the years. So interesting discussion. One of the things, there was another comment here that I wanted to. How do we get to this point? That's what they did in the '60s, Paul. They supported one another.
But that's not today's society.
How do we
in
get
today's
there?
society, in today's society overall, we don't support each other like we used to. I mean, everybody again, we in the '70s and '80s, the theme was greed is good. Everybody get what they get for themselves. Your Wall Street top CEOs went from making 40% more than their employees to making 400% more. I mean, that's just the way society has evolved.
How do we get
It's
there?
not. It's just. It's how society evolved. I
How
mean,
do we
that's
get
where
there?
it just happened. Greed
No, no,
is
no, no, no.
good. Do
I'm
y'all
not
not
talking about
remember?
where we are. I'm talking, how do we get to the point where right now, today, we support one another? The hell
Oh,
with the past.
I don't know, Karl. I mean,
I'll tell you an answer.
it's
I
hard.
got an answer for you.
Go ahead.
Okay, so during Jim Crow, even I can go all the way back to right after slavery. Within 100 years, all over the country, black people had built their own towns and didn't need white people for shit. Well, there's always been a thing against people of the color of our skin, of melanated people. We understand that. How many times we got to be told that? When Jim Crow happened and black people were segregated, black people did it again. We had Black Wall Streets all over the country. Just look in Louisville, West End, there was a part of there that was Black Wall Street. Well, what happened was we had movements. You had the Stick, you had Black Panther, you had the Nation of Islam, you had Martin Luther King's movement, you had movements going on, right? And so everyone was a part of this movement. Well, they knew that, and that's when they started assassinating all of those type of leaders. Now, back then, a man was a man and a woman was a woman. You look at this society today, you can claim to be anything you want to be now. You can take a man and now you got to force to give him the priestess of that he's a woman now. So you're looking at a two different mindset. So what happens is this. We don't think about being black and being together until the white man's foot is on our neck. I mean, you hear about it all the time. Buy black is what, one time a year or every time something happens, let's buy black? What makes us forget that? And then go right back into buying white, right? So I say this, oppression was good for black people. Oppression was good. After slavery, we was the best of people. During Jim Crow, we was the best of people. I say bring back Jim Crow and make us deal with one another. Listen to this. Check this out. Now, 4th Street, Karl, we same age. There was a time you couldn't shop on 4th Street. So what did black people have to do? Black people had to support one another. You had to go to a black dentist. You had to go to a black attorney. You had to go to a black doctor because your ass couldn't go to the white one, right? So that built up the community. Then after segregation came, which was the trick, it was to get black people to spend their resources on shit that we couldn't have. You see, that's why we wanted to get the white woman. We wanted to go to the white dentist. We wanted to go to the white stores, right? We wanted to give our money to them, and then we neglected our own community. So we were best when we had the pressure on our necks. We were a better people. We were a better people. And that's just the facts. If you want to go back to this, let's bring it back. Let's bring back Jim Crow and put us in the conditions to make us deal with one another. Simple as that. And those are facts. If I just mentioned the historical facts of how we got into this situation.
John,
yes.
We can't do a show together no more if you talking about bring back Jim Crow. Stop. No. Bring back Jim Crow. Did you just say
were
that?
Better people. Listen, go back in the Jim Crow era. Go back in the Jim Crow era and look at the time that we were doing. Go back to the Jim Crow era. Black businesses was at its best. Now go back there.
John, the KKK just downloaded your stream, and they're gonna put that on their site. Okay, I just need you to know that the KKK just downloaded your stream, and they're gonna put it on their site. Martin Luther King, he not only did he roll over in his grave, he done rolled over 3 times.
No,
and I think he sat up and said, what the hell?
Actually, before Martin Luther King died, he had admitted that maybe he did the wrong thing and put his people in the fire. Okay?
Yeah, but he didn't say bring back Jim Crow. You said bring. I know you don't mean it. I know you just doing the shock value on that. Bring back Jim Crow. So what's your favorite restaurant, John?
Huh?
Let's talk about
that. It's not the white one because I cook my own food. But here's the thing. You think I would want to eat somewhere where I'm not wanted? I don't understand how people back then would want to force a people who's want to spit in your food to make you feed them.
Because it's about dignity, John. Because it's about it ain't about me wanting to eat your food.
During the economics, black people,
it ain't about me wanting. It's never been about me wanting to eat in your restaurant. It's about dignity. You have a restaurant that's open to all people, and I'm a people. Let me
No,
in.
no,
I don't have to
I
love
disagree.
your people, but you gotta
Dignity
let
is
me in.
when you're not asking a people for something. When you're getting your own, that's dignity. You know why? Because that's how you get respect. When you doing your when you're begging for their shit, wait a minute, listen. When you're begging for their shit, you don't get no respect. But listen to this. I want you to do one thing. I want you to do one thing. Go look at the statistics. Go look at the statistics. Wait a minute. I'm gonna ask you one thing. Listen. As a businessman, I want you to do one thing. I want you to go back and look in history when black people had the most businesses. Go look at it. Go find it. I guarantee you it was the hardest times that we will call rough.
Oprah Winfrey don't exist. Let's see, who's some other great black business owners? None of them exist.
You never did any research on that.
They don't get loans, and they don't get any bank help, and they don't get any other financial help.
You never did no research on our economics before integration. You never did any research. You know nothing about that, do you? Do your research on during the time of Jim Crow.
All I know, John, is you were saying Jim Crow was good for black people, and that is a white supremacist motto. Stop with that. That is. You can ask for equality and dignity, and not have to have separate but equal. Separate but equal was never intended to be equal. So there's no sense in trying to pretend as though when there was Jim Crow and everything was separate but equal, that meant blacks were all right. No, what that meant was you get your spot and we get this big old spot. We get a Lexus, you get a Pinto. We get a penthouse, you get an apartment. We get acres of land and you get a small yard. No, we're not going back to Jim Crow. It's asinine, and I don't know you well enough.
Can you explain the farmers, all the black farmers, and how they lost their land? When we had a lot of black farmers during Jim Crow, can you explain how they lost their land? Can you explain that?
I don't know because I haven't researched it, but you're never going to convince me that Jim Crow.
You are unaware of the historical evidence. You are unaware. You living in this time, but you know nothing about how we behaved and how we had everything we wanted back then.
So you think all the people who fought for civil rights were idiots and that they should have never done it?
Didn't say that.
And that we didn't need civil rights and that Jim Crow was the way to go. Are you really saying that?
No, what I'm trying to explain to you is this. Pay attention to what I'm saying. Is that black people did the best when we knew that the white man was not our friend. We had no choice but to do business with each other.
Black people did their best when, like as you said, when the white man wasn't our friend, and then when we got our own freedom, we didn't know how to handle it. That doesn't mean the same thing, that we were better off. I don't even believe that I just said that. I'm just trying to appease your argument just to show you that one doesn't equate the solution to the other. Jim Crow's not the answer at the end of the day. I don't understand how you could even get those words to come out of your lips based off what you just told us, all the stuff you've been through. I mean, Jim Crow is based on blacks are not equal to us. They're not equal members of society. Therefore, they don't get the same right.
Listen, Paul, I know what you're going to quote, what you said mean. I'm not talking about what it means. I'm talking about how we responded to it.
We respond the same way.
We responded with supporting each other, just like these Asians and these foreigners do. We responded with support that we don't have today.
This is modern society who black Americans have integrated themselves into. And today, the motto of it takes a village to raise your kids no longer applies. You know how I know? Because if you are a parent today who's black and your next door neighbor whoops your child, You're not gonna just be like, well, it takes a community. No, that don't happen no more. Society has changed, and I accept that. We can't go back to the 1960s. We don't live like that no more. Our teachers can't even spank our child in school no more. Our teachers can't even say shit to our kids no more without us going off. That's just society now. So we can't go backwards and say, I wish this is how we could do it. How do we support each other? Society has changed. Now we have to adapt to that. What we need to do,
I ain't scared of you motherfuckers.
Take more pride in ourselves and respect things about what makes someone successful more than what makes people unsuccessful. Don't We no longer praise people who are drug dealers. We no longer praise people for coming out of jail and being tough and surviving it. We don't have to do that. We need to get the guns out of our kids' hands, because kids today think that having a gun makes you powerful, makes you ruler, makes you something. The kid who was 16 or 17, the kid who got shot by another teenager because they got into an argument over some he said, she said stuff. In the 60s, they fought it out. But today they want to shoot it out. We got to get the guns out of our kids' hands. You take away the toys, they ain't got nothing to play with. Give them education. Tell them that getting an education, going to college, going to a professional college after college is the way to go. Don't tell them that the best you can do is graduate high school and get a job. My mother, when I grew up, she never told me to graduate from high school and get a job. My mother always said, when you get out of high school, you are going to college, period. It wasn't even something that I thought about as not being an option, because it was ingrained in my head since I was a kid. And that's the way you got to raise children. High school is not the end of the line. Getting a job is not the end of the line. What are you going to do after high school? Hey, that comment's dead on. They are so lazy and shoot it out, and that is dead on. Kids are not just lazy with fighting and resolving disputes. They're lazy when it comes to actually working. Every kid I know, and that's my son and his friends, they all think they're just gonna grow up and be NBA players, or they're just gonna fall into some job that makes $500,000 a year, and they ain't got no skills. Kids think like that, and I have a kid that I'm telling, you're going to college, and it's still hard. They just don't think like that anymore. But when I was growing up, I don't know about you, Karl. I mean, going to college was just a part of what we expected. And my mom didn't graduate from high school, and no one in our family went to college except me and my sister. We were the first, but it was just something that she said was going to happen. Matter of fact.
Yeah, I know.
And
that's a culture. I didn't have that culture, and that's why I harp a lot on the fact that a lot of where we are and where we find ourselves today is because of the choices that we've made. I could have gone in a whole different direction. I can tell you, when I got out of high school, there was no encouragement in my household to go to college at all. There was in the high school among the coaches, for the sport that I read. But anyway, we have gone for a while. This has been a really good discussion tonight. We have entertained my brothers, the city of Louisville, which is floating behind us, right? Anyway, I want to just say thanks. Let me just say this before I close this broadcast. Any last words? Any last words, Paul?
John's right. We got to do better as a people. We have to change ourselves. If we want someone to invest in our communities, then we have to not only invest ourselves, but we have to change ourselves and make our communities more attractive.
Last words, John.
Well, everybody's responsible for themselves. And if you understand the program in the subconscious mind, you can actually live any type of life you want, and you can come out of any condition you want. But there are certain things you got to do to be able to get there. So I'm not into blaming no one other than the person that's looking in the mirror. I had to take that course. I had to learn it, and I know that when I give my talks and lectures, I'm not the only person that has this ability. Everyone has this ability to be able to change their condition in their lives. So I just say this is that you have to vibrate a vibration of gratitude and happiness in order to see your life change.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting stuff. There was one more comment there. Last words. Tell Paul to show us these Asian communities in Louisville that's doing so bad.
Iroquois Avenue. I mean, it ain't like they all live in half the hog and rich. I mean, there's Asian communities out by what South Third Street. I mean, they're not filthy rich. They have multiple people in their homes, and I mean, when you say they're not doing bad, I mean, the Asians commit crime. Carl can tell you. It's just we don't hear about
I
it
can
as
say
much as
what?
black people. Asians commit crimes.
Oh yeah, they do, and they steal from black people too sometimes. But I'm not gonna go there.
Right.
Y'all got quiet. Okay.
Because it's not on the scale of black people. You may see a
It's
little
just not on.
domestic thing. It's nowhere near on the scale of black people because, again, they see each other as foreigners in a foreign country. We see ourselves as residents.
Right. Well,
And bear in mind that even though black people aren't, more than 30% of the population, I don't know what the exact number is. Asians aren't that big of a percentage, maybe 1 or 2% at the most. So even like you said, it's on a different scale, but there's a lot less of them. But they have some bad communities as well.
And they got a bill, and we don't.
Yeah. I will leave the last words. First of all, I want to say thank you guys for joining me tonight. I will leave the last word to Westbrook, the great NBA player that was shaken up. Did y'all know he was shaken up by a comment?
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man? Bro, I'm out, man. That nigga's tripping.
I think that's what somebody think about some of what y'all said tonight, but I won't go there. But anyway, Paul Mullins, thank you, sir, for joining me tonight. John Yah, thank you for joining me. We will do this again on another day and another night.
All right.
Interesting show. Good night.
Bye-bye.
Good night. Okay, so everybody, let me just tell you, what a show. Whew, what a show. They got a little bit on fire, and I'm okay with that. I'm Karl Price. This has been Conscious Fever here on Ice Entertainment Television and Conscious Fever Radio. I'm going to send you out with a blooper, and then I'm going to send you out with the end credits. Thanks for joining me tonight. I will see you next week. Next week, please join us when my daughter is going to join us and talk about black veterinarians and black pet owners here on Conscious Fever, here on Ice Entertainment Television and Conscious Fever Radio. Good night. Oops. I think it should go a little faster. Try 50. Well, it's going 5. But if you exit out,
You reading fast. You already talking.
Okay, cool. Let's keep it going. Can we just start there?
Yep, whenever you're ready.
For those of you who subscribe to the New York Times, the 1619 Project may interest you. I lost my foot.
You are listening to Conscious Fever, hosted by Karl Price.
I'm coming back on this camera or back on this one?
You're going to come in on that one.
You are listening to Conscious Fever, hosted by Karl Price on 97thebeatfm.com.
I was born by the river in a little tent. running ever since. It's been a long, long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die. 'Cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes, it is. Then I go to my brother. And I say, brother, help me please. But he wind up knocking me back down on the knees. There've been times that I thought I couldn't last for long, but now I think I'm able, Father, to carry on. And it's been a long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes it is. Yes it is. Yes it is. Said I know that a change is gonna come one day. I know a change